So on this sunny day today, I'm delighted to welcome Lawrence Ball from Kent Wildlife Trust, who's going to be talking to us about the Bugs Matter Citizen Science Survey. I'm not going to go into any more detail about that because I'm sure you are going through, Lawrence. So I look forward to hearing about how to take part in this citizen science survey, what the results are telling us, although I'm not sure if I should look forward to that, but we'll see what you tell us. And what you found out so far. So over to you, Lawrence.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Kieran, and thanks very much for inviting us to come and speak this evening. And hello, everyone. Thank you to you for joining us this evening to learn more about the Bugs Matter Citizen Science Survey. So Bugs Matter is the national citizen science survey of bug splats on vehicle number plates to monitor flying insect abundance. A little bit about me. So I'm Dr. Lawrence Ball. I'm Ecological Data Analyst Lead at Kent Wildlife Trust. I've managed Bugs Matter since April last year. And full disclosure, I'm not an entomologist. So please bear that in mind when it comes to the questions at the end. My background is in geospatial studies and statistical analysis, and my research focus in the past has been around pastoralism and sort of rangeland ecology in southern Arabia. So it's quite a switch for me, but I'm very much enjoying it. So without further ado, let's crack on with the talk. So I'm going to start just with a general overview of Bugs Matter, then lead into how the data is collected, how it's analysed, and what the results are showing us so far. And then I'm going to finish just talking about what's new for this year's survey and our aspirations for the project going forward. So what is Bugs Matter? It's the National Citizen Science Survey of bug splats on vehicle number plates to monitor flying insect abundance. And we state flying insects because it's unlikely that wingless insects would probably be sampled on vehicle number plates. And Kieran, probably even more unlikely that earthworms would be. Yeah, and we use the term bugs really to just generally refer to those particular insects, and sort of it fits with the sort of marketing of the survey. So who runs Bugs Matter? So Kent Wildlife Trust run the survey in partnership with Buglife and with the support of the RSPB. And in 2023, this year, also with the support of Herts and Middlesex Wildlife Trust. So each year we've had different organisations that we've partnered with. So in the past, we partnered with Kent Wildlife Trust in 2021 and 2022, Somerset Wildlife Trust in 2021, and Essex Wildlife Trust in 2022. And these partnerships are really sort of valuable. They really contribute to the income and the running of the project. So this year we've actually developed a range of partnership tiers, which sort of offer sort of different products for different budgets. And we've basically put a lot of work into developing these, and we hope that we can push these forward and people can contribute to funding Bugs Matter and promoting it as well. So if you are interested, then there's a couple of email addresses there. So let's have a bit of a history about Bugs Matter. So in 2004, the RSPB ran a nationwide survey using the same methods, but a slightly different name and without an app. And they produced quite a large data set that has proven very useful as a baseline to compare our more recent data sets with. In 2019, then we picked up that project and started to develop it and build an app. So in 2019, we ran the survey just in Kent as a pilot. And then we launched the nationwide survey using the app in 2021, and it ran in 2022. So we're now entering our third official year of the app. So why run Bugs Matter? Well, the most fundamental reason is that there's a lot of evidence indicating that insect numbers are declining. So we've got studies from the UK published very recently using very systematic survey methods that have shown decreases of 33% in total abundance of large moths since 1968 and 2017. The most recent State of the UK's Butterfly Report has reported 80% of UK butterfly species have decreased in abundance or distribution, with the abundance of specialist species having decreased by over 1/4 and the distribution by over 2/3 between 1976 and last year. And then looking further afield across Europe, Ullman et al. Analysed data set from a range of Malays insect traps across 63 nature reserves and found a 76% decline in flying insect biomass between 1989 and 2016. Moller used a similar method to us, but actually used the windscreens of the cars and found an 89% reduction in the number of squashed insects between 1997 and 2017. And Horman in 2019 wrote that larger moths had declined by 61% and ground beetles by 42% in Germany over a 27-year period. In 2020, Van der Klink et al. Did a meta-analysis involving 166 studies from across the globe and identified around 9% decrease per decade in insect abundance. There was variance around this. In some locations it was much higher, and in some locations it was less. Harris et al. Found number of beetles captured in traps in New Hampshire had declined by 83% between 1973 and 2017. And Weprick et al. Found that butterfly abundance declined by 33% over 20 years in Ohio. So it's these studies that have obviously sort of raised awareness of insect declines, but also sort of the main driver behind why we want to run Bugs Matter. These declines are obviously extremely concerning. Insects and other invertebrates underpin proper functioning of the natural world around us through the roles they play in ecosystems, pollinating, decomposing, recycling nutrients, and as a food source for many other organisms. So a loss of insects could have catastrophic impact on the Earth's natural systems and the human survivability of our planet. And therefore, methods to track insect numbers are extremely valuable. But Bugs Matter is a little bit different to these other invertebrate monitoring programs. But what the studies we've just mentioned, as well as the Rothenstedt Insect Survey of aphids and larger moths, the UK Butterfly Monitoring Scheme and the National Moth Recording Scheme, in that Bugs Matter is indiscriminate in the flying insects that it samples. So we think that by having this sort of broader approach to sampling flying insects, we might get a slightly broader and more general picture of insect trends. Bugs Matter is also a really good tool as a citizen science project to raise awareness of invertebrate conservation. Obviously, it is sort of in the public domain as something that anyone can use, regardless of your level of interest in sort of insects. So it's a really good tool to teach people about insect declines, about the drivers of insect declines, and what we can do as individuals as well to sort of protect and do conservation for invertebrates. More specifically then, why count bug splats on number plates? Well, the concept's fairly simple. We would expect that the number of bugs splatted on vehicle number plates to indicate change in insect abundance over time. So the method is analogous to the so-called windscreen phenomenon. There is a Wikipedia page for that, which is the anecdotal observation that people tend to find fewer insect splats on the windscreens of their cars now compared to in the past. So indeed, many of you may have observed this within your lifetimes. So how does the actual data collection work? So we've got a 1-minute video here, which I hope will play. Doesn't seem to have worked. Okay, I have to give up on that. So the Bugs Matter app is downloadable from the Android and the Apple app stores. So citizen scientists download and sign up to the app. And the app is produced by a wonderful company called Natural Aptitude, who create actually build a whole range of conservation and environmental and citizen science apps. So once a user has downloaded the app, signed up, they add a vehicle to the app by entering the registration plate number of their car. So we have this connected to a lookup API, which basically fetches quite a lot of details about the specification of the vehicle, such as the sort of make, the model, width, height, all these sort of things. And we actually use that data in our analysis to understand whether and how the size, shape, and maybe even the color of the vehicle might affect the number of bugs that are splattered. Now, I'll come back to this later when we talk about the analysis and the results in a bit more detail. So before starting a journey, the user cleans the number plate, then taps the Start Journey button in the app. The mobile device GPS then records the route that's driven. And when you reach your destination, you stop traveling. For example, you might stop at services for a few minutes. You just tap End Journey in the app, count the number of bug splats on your number plate, and submit that in the app along with a photograph. Along with the data that you've entered, also the start and end times of the journey distance, and obviously the geometry of the journey route you've driven are all submitted along with that data record. So to date, we've got 7,539 users. We've splatted 35,102 bug splats. I should say at this point, if you are going to use the app, please don't make journeys specifically to splat bugs. We all know the impact of internal combustion engines on our climate. We have 10,628 journeys logged in the app over 429,213 miles. So the analysis. What does our raw data actually look like? So each journey has an ID, the start time, an end time, distance, the vehicle specification information, splat count, the geometry of the route that was driven, and some details about the number plate size. So this is what the raw data set more or less looks like. And the first thing we need is a standardized unit of measure. We refer to this as the splat rate. So if we decide to launch the survey abroad and number plates are different sizes, or if people have custom shapes front number plates here, that could be inputted into the app. And therefore, standardize our bug splat data that we're getting in, our unit of measure becomes splats per centimetre squared per mile. And you can see the nerdy ones of you, there's some equations there, and you can see that ends up being quite a small number. So in that example, 0.0146463. So once we've obviously generated our splat rates, we then do the data cleaning. And this is a really key important step in the analysis. So first of all, we remove overseas journeys or journeys on ferries, as well as journeys from outside the survey period. We then remove journeys with GPS errors. These are journeys where the GPS signal in the user's mobile device has dropped out for whatever reason, perhaps due to battery in the phone dying or low battery mode disabling the GPS. There's probably any number of reasons it can happen, but you can see from the map on the left there, this results in long straight lines in our data set. And unfortunately, these journeys obviously can't be included in the analysis. We then remove very short journeys of less than 1 mile or 3 minutes, very fast journeys with an average speed over 70 miles per hour, very slow journeys with an average speed less than 3 miles per hour. And just because we don't think that those sampling periods are sufficient to provide a good data set. Finally, we have to remove all journeys where it rained, and these are flagged by the user in a checkbox just before they submit the results in the app. So you can see in the maps here that in our 2022 analysis, so this is all of the data from Bugs Matter, 7,207 of the 10,140 journeys were retained for the analysis. Another key part of the analysis then is covariance. So this is accounting for a range of other factors that could affect how bugs are splatted on a given journey. So essentially, covariates are variables that we can measure, which might affect how many bugs are splatted, and not of primary interest in our analysis. In our analysis, our primary interest is trying to look at changes in the number of bug splats over time. So examples of these include the journey distance, the average speed of the journey, the calendar day of the journey, type of vehicle, as well as its size, shape and color, temperature at the time of the journey, the time of day of the journey, the altitude of the journey, and the types of habitats or amount of vegetation neighboring the journey route, as well as the types of roads that were actually driven on that journey. So to the right here, you can see an example of a temperature raster from which we can extract the mean daily temperature of a given journey. So every journey then has that data associated with it. Similarly, the NDVI data in the bottom right there shows vegetation greenness around the journey route. So what does our data look like? It's right skewed because so many journeys have 0 insect splats. In total, 44% of all journeys recorded through the bugs matter had no insect splats. 19% of journeys recorded only 1 insect. So because of this, and because it's count data, we use something called a zero-inflated negative binomial regression model to estimate change in the splat rate between survey years, while taking into account covariates that we just talked about in this slide. So I'm going to present to you now some of the results. We'll start with some sort of summary statistics, and then we'll get more into the results from the statistical models. So in 2021, 3,212 journeys were recorded over 112,312 miles, and in 2022, 4,140 journeys were recorded over 124,402 miles. And you can see in 2022, we were obviously a little concerned throughout June that we were actually going to have fewer journeys than the previous year. Thankfully, something changed in early July, and a lot of people started making large numbers of journeys, and we overtook the previous year's journey count. So yeah, we're really happy with that. We can also look at the number of journeys by country. So as you can see, the majority of journeys were conducted in England. Second columns in each of the 2-year sections of the table show the journey count. And you can see that Northern Ireland sort of had a 3-fold increase in the number of journeys between 2021 and 2022. So we really hope that continues to increase as well. We can also look at the count of journeys by region. So as you can see, the southeast, southwest, and the east of England, the greatest coverage of journeys. Regarding counties, across 2021 and 2022, the most journeys were recorded in Kent, Gwent, and Essex. And this is really interesting because these were actually 2 partner wildlife trusts that we collaborated with in those years, and so it was excellent to see those sort of partnerships and having a positive impact on participation in the survey. Getting into the meat of it, you can see here how the mean splat rate changes over time through the course of the survey season. For all 4 surveys in there, you can see that 2004 the survey was only conducted in June. So 1 month into the survey, the variation in splat rate is quite high. You can see after sort of July and August, it tends to sort of even out. The variance is reduced, and by the end of the survey seasons, we've sort of got very little variance around the mean there. So the average splat rate was 0.234 splats per mile in 2004, 0.108 splats per mile in 2019, 0.099 splats per mile in 2021, and 0.075 splats per mile in 2022. So as participation in the Bugs Matter survey grows and more citizen scientists record more journeys each year, we would expect to see that mean splat rate stabilize a bit earlier in the survey season. So here are the results of the statistical model. Keep this relatively simple. So the purpose of the statistical model is to take into account all those covariates we described earlier before estimating the change in the number of splats between years. So the eagle-eyed among you will notice that our standardized unit of measure, splat rate, is not actually on the y-axis there. This is because in the statistical model, distance, so obviously splats over distance, distance is kind of included as something called an offset term. So this is kind of the most appropriate way to model rate data. Essentially, the response variable we're analysing is splat count corrected for distance, which is kind of conceptually the same as the splat rate, but technically it's still a count. It's really hard to explain, and probably not worth getting bogged down in. But in terms of relative change, that would be the same for splat rate. So the key comparisons to look at here then are between the large national data sets from 2004, collected by the RSPB, and the two most recent Bugs Matter ones, because as I mentioned, 2019 was just in Kent. So these showed a 58.4% reduction in bug splats between 2004 and 2021, and a 63.7% reduction in bug splats between 2004 and 2022. So when we look at this over a decade, it equates to approximately a 35% reduction in the number of bug splats per decade. So why haven't we fitted a line through these points to see where it crosses zero, so we know when the splat will hit the fan? Well, the answer is that we simply do not have enough data over enough years to estimate a trend. With a low temporal resolution, so data from only a few points in time, there's a chance that insect populations in those years are atypical or unrepresentative of the long-term actual abundance of insects. So take last year, for instance, the number of bugs splatted was down 12% from 2021, which is quite shocking. But does this reflect the long-term trend, or does that reflect the impacts of last year's record-breaking summer temperatures? So really, we need more data. We need more data from more years in order to report a trend. This is why it's so important the Bugs Matter survey continues into the future. Indeed, if we can get our act together, we can take action for insects and implement successful conservation interventions for invertebrates, Bugs Matter could actually be a really effective tool to monitor population recovery and growth into the future. So we're just going to drill down a bit now into the results at sort of country, regional and county level. The maps on the right simply show the mean splat rate between years. So that's not data from the statistical models, that is just a comparison of means at country level, regional level and county. If the administrative error in those maps is in grey, then no data was collected there. On the left is a matrix which shows the results of the statistical models for each country. So in summary, these showed significantly fewer bugs splatted over the survey years in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. For Scotland, however, the results showed that more bugs were actually splatted in 2021 compared to in 2022. Sorry, in 2022 compared to 2021. But this result wasn't actually statistically significant and the confidence intervals are quite large, across zero. So actually the analysis shows that there could have even been a decline of 9% between those years. Ultimately, again, it comes back to the amount of data. So in Scotland, we just need more data in order to reduce those confidence intervals and have more certainty around the estimates. And actually, when you look at reports of midges in Scotland last year, apparently there were much less. So that doesn't quite fit with what we're seeing there either. Regionally, there were significant reductions in bug splats between 2004 and the last 2 years, and even between 2021 and 2022. So only the northeast, southwest, and Yorkshire and Humber didn't see notable reductions in splat rates between 2021 and 2022. So we thought maybe that's because it wasn't as hot and dry there, but no, it was just as hot and dry there as it was in the rest of the UK. So the causes for that, we're just not sure. Could again be just due to a small sample size when you look at those particular regions in particular. So once we get to county level, we only really run the statistical models as needed. For instance, if we've partnered with a wildlife trust from a particular county. And it means the issue is at this scale, there's just not enough journeys and not enough samples in order to get run the analysis at all, and even to get sort of a good level of certainty around the estimated changes bug splats. Cool, so let's talk a bit about those covariates then that we discussed earlier. So these statistical models showed that compared to conventional cars, so your just traditional car-shaped car, splat count was 55% higher for heavy goods vehicles, 13% lower for vans, but SUVs did not differ significantly from cars. So vehicle type is quite an important variable to include in the analysis, as the differing aerodynamics, different vehicle types could affect the number of insects that are sampled. This hypothesis has, however, been somewhat challenged by an automotive aerodynamics expert with 40 plus years of wind tunnel experience. So he's suggested that not only has the location of the, well, not only have license plate aerodynamics not changed, it's also placed near the stagnation point on the vehicle, or the location the air naturally comes to a stop at the leading edge. So in other words, the plates are at the tip of the blunt nose of the aerodynamic teardrop shape, so their experience should be consistent regardless of what happens elsewhere. They're sort of suggesting that regardless of what's going on with the aerodynamics, the rest of the vehicles, and modern cars presumably are more aerodynamic than was in the past, that registration, the number plate being at the front there, at something they call the stagnation point, could mean actually that the type of vehicle used doesn't have as much of an influence on the way insects are sampled than we had previously thought. But ideally, we would fund our own wind tunnel experiment. So hopefully we can do that in the future. Just quickly looking at distance then, so splat count increased steeply with journey distance, as you can see, up to sort of 20 to 50 miles, after which it started to decrease by about 1% fewer splats for every 10 miles driven. So this shows that very short journeys sampled 0 or few bugs, presumably because a minimum sampling duration or distance is required before bugs are encountered and sampled. Conversely, longer journeys sample fewer bugs than expected. And there's two main factors that we think could be leading to this result. So firstly, longer journeys are more likely to follow motorways. And we know that fewer bugs are sampled on motorways, which we'll come back to later. Secondly, on longer journeys, there's a chance that sampled insects could be blown off the number plate, or the sort of splat marks, I guess, blown off a bit, blown away. And so, yeah, if the average speed of the journey is quite high, then it could be that by the end of a 200-mile journey, then some insects have been lost. If we look at average speed then, splat count increased by about 3% with each 10 mile per hour increase in average journey speed. So this is quite interesting, but also unfortunately not that informative, because we don't know whereabouts on a journey bugs are splatted, and therefore we can't correlate that directly with the speed at that point in the journey. But actually, information sort of on the average speed is not particularly useful for our analysis. Regarding road type, we found that splat count was significantly higher for journeys that travelled along a lot of secondary and tertiary roads. So these are like single track or single carriageway roads. There was far fewer bugs splatted on journeys with high proportions of motorway or dual carriageway roads. So for each 10% increase in the proportion of journey route that was on secondary roads, splat rate increased by 1%. For each 10% increase in the proportion of journey route that was on secondary roads, splat rate increased by 4%. We can also see that from these graphs that as the proportion of either secondary or tertiary roads increases, those confidence intervals, so that's the coloured semi-transparent buffer around those lines, becomes wider. And this means that basically, if you're driving on smaller, more rural roads, there's higher variance in the number of bug splats that you'll collect. And this could be due to the fact that these sort of roads could have 20 mile per hour or 60 mile per hour speed limit, or it could be due to the fact that these roads are sort of more nested amongst different types of habitats, or you could have insects, insect activity quite variable around these sort of these tertiary roads compared to things like motorways. Looking at the time of day, on average, splat count increased by 6% with each hour of the day that passed. So this could be due to the fact that insects are generally more active at higher ambient air temperatures, which occur later in the day. But it could also be that insects are attracted to the lights, headlights of vehicles after dusk, or even road lighting at night, which could be sort of influencing this trend. And here's the relationship between temperature and the number of bugs splatted, which is more or less what we expect, more bug splats at warmer temperatures. And then here we're looking at the vegetation greenness journey route. So this again is kind of as expected. The more vegetation, or the higher the NDVI values, which are a proxy for sort of vegetation productivity, vegetation biomass, the more bug splats there are splattered during that journey. What we're going to do for this year's analysis is actually delve into that in more detail and look at the different types of habitats, specifically in the amount of those that borders different journey routes. So hoping that can start to sort of pick apart greenness due to arable, or sort of greenness due to woodland, and then really delve into the sort of 27 priority habitat types that we have in the UK and look at how insect abundance changes around those. Look at the day of the year, splat count decreased by quite a bit, 4.9% with each week that passed during the survey season. And this relationship was strongest in 2004 and 2019. Nonetheless, on average, 2 fewer insects were sampled at the end of the survey seasons in 2021 and 2022 than were at the beginning. So this has made us think actually we should extend the survey season. So next year, we're going to extend it into May at least, and possibly in the long term, we would look at doing the survey year round. Great, so that's the main results. I hope that wasn't too confusing. Luckily, all our sort of hard work has paid off. We've had some great impact with the Bugs Matter project. So our 2022 results attracted national and international news coverage. So we had 423 media mentions to a total reach of 780 million, which we think is fantastic. The Daily Mail had a very high reach, followed by the Independent, Birmingham Mail, and there was even articles sort of in Egypt, Korea, and Canada, which was great. And then the icing, cherry on the top was having a mention in the BBC series Wild Isles, where the change in bug splat results from our study was communicated. So now I'm just going to talk briefly about what's been updated in the app for this year. So I'll start with showing you participation map on the left here. So you can see that participation has not been huge. It's not been quite what we wanted it to be. We've still generated a lot of data, a lot of useful data, but we were hoping that thousands of people from every county would be doing the survey. So what we've done over winter is really focused on reducing sort of friction points and trying to improve the user experience. So what we've done is discontinued the use of splatometers. So these were a sort of cardboard template that you would receive in the post, and you would hold this up to the number plate and count the bugs within it. So the main issue with this system was that there was sort of a long delay between users signing up to the app and then receiving the splatometer in the post. This is obviously very frustrating for the user who wants to get on and do the survey, but it also means 2 weeks later when it arrives, then they have sort of interest in partaking in the survey may have faded slightly. Another issue with it was that it was actually quite difficult to sort of hold the splatometer and take a photo at the same time. So after a bit of discussion, we decided the best solution would be just to remove the splatometer completely. So there's now a virtual template in the camera view of the Bugs Matter app that you hold up. And instead of just counting bugs within the window template, you actually just count bug splats across the entire number. So obviously this has really improved user experience. People can sign up and get on and do surveys the same day. But it also has increased the sensitivity of our analysis. So because we have such a large number of journeys with no insects, splats at all, what we've done is expanded the sampling area by about 4 times. So this has increased the sensitivity of our sampling. So on average, we're going to be sampling a higher number of bugs, which is going to make it easier for us to actually detect change under these current conditions. So the reason we started with splatometers was because we adopted it from the methods that were used in 2004. But it turns out really now, possibly under the insect abundance scenarios that we're seeing at the moment, we need to move to a larger sort of splatting area, sampling area. In the cases where someone's been lucky enough to go through a lot of bugs and they've got too many bugs to count, there is an option in the app to just select too many to count. And actually, although that's wonderful to get that data, it is kind of an outlier in the data set and actually has less use when we're looking at insect trends over time. So other improvements include no longer requiring people's full addresses to send out splatometers. There's new pop-up windows to explain why we need the registration plate, why we need the postcode of the user. And one of the reasons is so we can produce insights and maps like this one on the left, showing where sign-ups are occurring and where we need to target marketing. There's also been sort of a few complaints about an ongoing sign-up issue with the app, which is currently trying to be resolved. It happens when a user is using another natural aptitude app, so Garden Bird Watch, Butterfly Count, I think they have a whole range of apps. And if you're already signed up to one of those, you just need to use the same login. So looking forward and thinking about our bigger aspirations, we really hope to deploy Bugsmatter overseas. In the long term, actually at a global scale. This is actually going to be a lot easier now we are sampling using the whole number plate. Now that we don't have to send out splatometers and now that we can have custom number plate dimensions in the app. And we're currently looking to fund translation of the app into other languages. We would also like to run the survey year-round to better understand seasonal change in insect abundance, perhaps in relation to climate change. We've done a pilot study with Greenhouse AI to start to pilot the idea of counting bug splats using AI technology from the photographs. Unfortunately, we have had to put that on hold for the moment, but hopefully in the future we can find funding to revisit that work. We're also currently working with Essex and Sussex Gliding Club. Shout out to Adrian. So last weekend we were lucky enough to go up in a glider and it was fantastic. And they are going to splat bugs on the leading edges of the wings of their gliders. And we're also sort of starting to think about other types of vehicles, so whether you can splat bugs on trains and buses. And the amount of data we would collect in that way would be fantastic, especially as a lot of those buses and trains follow fixed routes. So that would be quite interesting from sort of analytical point of view. We're also looking to work more closely with CEH and the RSPB around the science and the analysis, and hoping to put together a scientific advisory group over the coming year. And we really hope that if we can demonstrate the value of the project and show that the data can generate information about trends in insect abundance, and we hope there might be some support from the government. So just to finish then, some exciting live stats. So up until 6 p.m. today, day one in 2021, we had 33 journeys submitted. Last year we had 22, and so far today, well, until 6 p.m. today, we've had 55. So it looks like, fingers crossed, our efforts to sort of increase participation might be working. Thank you very much for listening. If you do want to find out more about the project, please feel free to email info@bugsmatter.app, email myself, or visit the Bugsmatter pages on the Kent Wildlife Trust or Buglife websites. Cool. Thank you for listening. Are there questions? I think Kieran's probably going to step in now.